everybody, and welcome back to Fire and Pod, a podcast where we recap every episode of the new HBO Game of Thrones series, House of the Dragon. I am your host, Katie, and I am here again with my co-host, Chanelle. Chanelle, how are you today?
Good. Excited to talk about this lovely show again.
Yeah. We are joined today by Javier. Josh is not able to make it this week, but we are very lucky to have Javier as our guest. Javier, how are you? Welcome.
Thank you. I'm good. I'm very excited to be on the podcast and talk about this show. So
we are excited to have you.
Yes.
Well, let us jump in. Thank you both so much again for being here. I'm excited to talk about the show. Also, I should mention we are brought to you by Silent Podcast, where we are anything but silent. Got to give us a little bit of a shout out. So this is episode 2 we are here to talk about. It's called The Rogue Prince. And we open the episode. We have a title sequence. We have an intro.
I was thinking that too, because we were just talking about how we're like, there's no title sequence. But you know what? If you think about Game of Thrones and the first episode, I don't think they had a title sequence either in the first episode. It didn't come till the second episode, if I remember correctly.
You're probably right.
Yeah, so fitting.
So we talked about this last week, Javier, about the show having the same theme song, and I know, Chanelle, we were hoping that we would get a little bit of a new theme song if we got an intro. Same song. I was like, what the hell?
Rude as hell.
It's a different show.
100% agree. I feel like, try to differentiate yourself a little bit. Like, I know you're Game of Thrones, you want to be connected to it, but if you watch the show, you know it's connected to Game of Thrones. Like, switch it up for us. Come on.
Exactly. And like, the show is the song is iconic. The show is iconic too, for the most part. But the song is iconic, but like, we don't need this. Give us a new iconic song. Maybe like a twist on the old iconic song. I don't know. I'm a little disappointed in that. I was hoping at least for like a remix or something.
Totally.
Anything.
I agree. Anything.
Oh, well, what are we gonna do? What can we do? So I did actually take a look. I did a quick Google about what the title sequence actually is, the theme, because I wasn't sure just watching it, and it turns out that that's the Targaryen family tree with blood running through it, which I actually thought was very cool. Visually, I thought the blood running through it. I thought originally maybe it was like the streets or the Red Keep, but apparently according to Google, it's the Targaryen family tree. So
yeah, I thought it was like, because they came over and conquered, right, from Essos. Right. So I thought it was like them just like conquering all this land and stuff. But like, I guess the family tree would make sense.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting, because I had the same thought as you, Chanelle. I thought it was the streets and just the Targaryens either taking over or going to war with each other or whatever it is we're about to see, maybe a little of both. But apparently it's a family tree. So I thought that was pretty interesting. But we open with a pretty jarring, in my opinion, scene of crabs just eating a guy. So obviously like a ton of crabs, not only like 2, like thousands of crabs on the shore of, I guess, one of the seaside cities, where later it's called Stepping Stone.
I was going to say, I think it's at the Stepping Stones. Where it's happening.
Yeah. These guys some of them are alive, some of them are dead, but the crabs are just going to town feasting on some bodies that are just laying around, which was pretty gruesome. So it seems like this pirate issue has not gotten taken care of, which we will hear more about throughout the episode.
Yeah, it's a mess.
Yeah. Honestly, I was for some reason my brain went to, wait, is this a White Walker? Like, I was like, a decaying body. I was like, wait, no way they're bringing White Walkers into this right now. So I was like, hold on, even though it was gruesome. but that was like my first thought, like, White Walker, but no, it was definitely not that. But
that would have been a choice. Imagine.
Yes, I agree.
That would have been like, you're really going there.
Choice. Yeah, for sure. No, none of that. No, it makes sense. It makes sense, because they're like pretty savage on that side. I feel like the sea peeps are pretty savage.
Yeah, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
I have a feeling we're only gonna, especially based on the preview for the next episode, we're only gonna see more of their savagery. So I'm excited.
Next episode, based on the history too.
Yeah, not to jump too far ahead, we'll talk about it. But the next episode definitely looks like we're already gearing up for some crazy stuff happening. So this was a really good, I think the first episode was a really great episode that kind of helps set up and get a good understanding of just the lay of the land and some of the relationships. But this episode, I feel like we just get a layer deeper in some of these relationships and the politics going on. I feel like it really gave us a good idea of like who's allies with who and what everybody's true intentions are. So to start, really like this episode. It felt like it kept, I know we already started talking about it, but I'm backing up a little bit just to give overall thoughts. But I think this episode, it kept the momentum, even though, it was more kind of like, putting the blocks in place. I think the momentum really kept going, and it kept me compelled from the start to the finish. I don't know what you guys think.
Yeah, no, I really enjoyed the episode. The thing that I'm really noticing about this series compared to Game of Thrones is, like, even though there's like a lot of names and stuff, the storytelling is really good. Like, I feel like I can follow along pretty well. Like, I know exactly what's going on for the most part. And that's really good considering it's coming from a history book. So you wouldn't think they would have such a compelling story for the most part. I'm excited to see, later on, like, when some of the crazy stuff goes down. But this episode was good. It had a lot of back and forth, and we got some dragons. That's the most important part. I could see the $20 million like bleeding out of their budget as usual. But yeah, no, I really enjoyed it.
On it for me, like, I hate to be that person.
No, that's okay.
I really loved the first episode. This episode for me was a little too slow. I feel like they were a little bit kind of rehashing. I guess we'll get into it as we go over the episodes, but kind of like rehashing these relationships. And I didn't feel a lot of progress in a lot of the relationships, if that makes sense. So to me, like, it was a solid episode. Don't get me wrong. I enjoyed it, but I do feel like it was a little tad slow for me. But like you said, the preview for the next episode looks like things are going to keep picking up. So I got to remember with Game of Thrones, it's like, it's a marathon, not a sprint.
Yeah.
Like, this is how the OG Game of Thrones was. It's a slow build. Like, you got to like fall. And that's the thing. Like, I haven't fallen in love with these characters yet. Like, which in like Game of Thrones, like because I'm thinking about like season 2 and 3. By that point, I was already so far involved that like I loved all these side stories. So here I'm not really rooting for anyone yet. So that's probably why I think I found it a little slow for me. But I think that as I get to know these characters better and like finally be able to pick a favorite here or there or pick someone to root for, I think that'll help it like speed up for me at least.
Yeah, I would say the only people that I actually like are Renira and Damon.
Yeah, same.
Right now,
Same.
But yeah, it's early. Like,
yeah,
the first couple, like I said with Game of Thrones, like the first episode really started with a bang. You know what I mean? And they took you to the Starks, who are just like, most of them are like really likable characters in general. Yeah. So of course you had a few favorites, and you meet Tyrion in the very first episode, who's probably one of the most likable characters, like right from the beginning. So, it has a lot to live up to when it comes to that. Again, it's coming from a history book. So yeah, it'll probably be a slow build up, but I can see compared to the first episode, I can see what you're saying for sure.
Yeah, I think, Chanelle, what you said, I think is a really good point too. I think the storytelling, it's really easy to follow. And I think the difference between the main Game of Thrones series and this is that there were so many characters and so many houses and so many dynamics that we just had to like jump into from the very beginning. Where this, it's like they can kind of take their time and show us really the interpersonal relationships between everybody in the council and in the family and these few different houses, but it's all set in really one place for now. So I think it's giving us a little bit of an easier time to understand, like, oh, here are the dynamics at play here, which is interesting. Javier, I could see what you mean about it maybe being a little bit slow. There probably is a happy medium that they could find. I think they're probably going to hit that in the next episode. That's really what it seems like to me.
Yeah, I agree. I'm very optimistic that, like, because I feel like they're doing a good job. I agree. Like, focusing on, as opposed to Game of Thrones, they were always like panning here to the Lannisters, panning here to the Starks, panning here to the Tyrells. Like here, like you said, like they are more focused on a more close-knit group. So I think like it'll be, we'll fall for these characters faster than in the original Game of Thrones. So I'm looking forward to that.
Totally agree. So after we see this pretty wild crab scene, I mean, like a lot of crabs, like, do they bring the crabs with them, or do the crabs just like come out for feast? Like, I'm just so confused. I want to know more.
They live there.
The crabs all just live there?
That's what they live. Well, I mean, it's like, It's the stepping stone. It's right by the sea. But like, if you're just like having battles there all the time, that's free meat. They're just chilling there.
That's true.
You know?
I guess they know where to feast.
Maybe they bring more. I don't know.
Yeah, like I'm like, are they putting these crabs on a ship? Like, I don't know. Whatever.
Yeah,
I'm sure we'll see. Yeah. So from there we move into the small council meeting, and Viserys is sharing news about Sir Ryam of the Kingsguard, not Ryan, Ryam. I know that because I watched it with subtitles on the second time, and I was like, oh, it's not
good
Ryan,
call.
it's Ryam.
Yeah,
Smart.
It was very helpful when taking notes, I promise. And they've invited some candidates to come and fill the empty seat of the Kingsguard. And as they're having this conversation, Corlys comes storming in, and he's just upset. He's sharing the news about what happened at the Stepping Stone. 4 ships have been taken. One that was flying his banner, so it was his house's ship, and he's imploring the court to do something about it. And he's serious. He's like, I want to know what you guys are going to do. And Otto's kind of like, yeah, we'll compensate you for your ships and your men. He's like, no, I don't give a shit about that. Like, we need to stake our claim, and we need to seize it by force because we're in a weak state right now, and we're just doing nothing. We're sitting here. And typical Viserys, he just doesn't really want to take a stand. He doesn't really have an opinion or really want to like do much. He's just still a little wishy-washy, and he doesn't want to move forward. And the court actually kind of does back him here, and he just doesn't want to start a war with the free cities because he feels like the losses would be incalculable, and the 7 kingdoms have never gone to war with any of the free cities before. So this would be the first time in history.
Yeah, I think the big thing here, and I'm not sure if they said it in this meeting, but that place is like kind of what is it? Like the meeting point of trade, or it's like in between where they trade and stuff. So it's like really hindering them a little bit. But yeah, I think when they're talking about the free cities and everything like that, like that's kind of their tie still to Essos and Valyria and stuff like that. And I think they're trying to maybe keep their toes a little bit in there because that's where they're from. So I can see why they wouldn't want to fight that. But yeah, it's just everyone's like, I don't understand. Like, this is like wrecking our trade and stuff. We need to do something, but I can see his hesitation for sure.
Right.
Yeah, no, I agree. I feel like this episode, we got a lot of scenes of, so I do agree with Viserys. Yes, he's given this very wishy-washy. He's like a weak king. But like, I felt like in this episode, we got a lot of instances like this one where I was like, okay, like if I were a king, yes, maybe going to war right away is not the first step. So like in this moment, I kind of understood where Viserys was coming from. Like, okay, wait, let's try to look at this from a different lens. Like, we don't just want to jump into war. And like you said, they had never gone to war before. Like, this can possibly start something that can end poorly, very poorly for the Targaryens. So I do think this was one of the times where I was like, okay, Viserys, that's a good idea. Like, yes, let's not jump into this war like hot-headed that way. So
yeah, for sure. And I think what's really interesting about this scene in general is just how comfortable everybody feels. Yes, it is a small council, but like for Corlys to feel comfortable to storm in, and Otto to feel comfortable to shut him down, and basically just talk over Viserys and feel like they are the ones that are making the call. Like, it's almost like he doesn't have any say over his own council and his own decisions, which I think it feels like he's really starting to understand that and realize that. It feels like things are maybe slipping away from him, or other people in his council are getting more power or becoming a little more bold, which is kind of almost feels like a theme throughout the episode, with him at least as a character. So I think that's pretty interesting to kind of watch and see some of the moves that he decides to make. But Corlys does say he wants to know right now what reason does the crab feeder have to fear the crown. And here we find out that Daemon has not returned to the Vale after all to his wife. He has taken over Dragonstone, and he has the gold cloaks with him, and he's been there for 6 months. So we do have a time jump here. He's been there for about half a year, or over half a year, a little bit. So we're led to believe that we're about 6 months in the future from the first episode. So interesting to kind of find out that that's where we are right now in time, and just how things have shaken out since episode 1 and Aemma's passing.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, because I think Renira. I could never say her name right, but I know.
It's okay. We all struggle with the names.
Was like, oh, it's been half a year since my mother's passing. Blah blah blah. So, it had jumped quite a bit. I also learned that she is 15.
Yes, we have finally learned that she's 15.
She is 15, which I guess that means that her handmaiden is also 15, or maybe they're the same age. I don't know.
Yeah, so that's what I'm assuming.
Yeah, but yeah, like showing this time jump that it's like 6 months later, I feel like from what we know from the trailer and stuff, like maybe the time jumps are going to be very consistent throughout the season. Like I feel like there might be like huge time jumps like that all the time, because Game of Thrones was a lot slower in its timing, but that's just because of how the books were written. They were written over a couple years or something like that, right? So, or I don't remember how many years, so it was a bit slower with the storytelling. So this one's interesting because it's like all these huge jumps, but I'm not sure how many seasons they're gonna get. I know it probably will end with the Dance of Dragons. I assume that's what's gonna happen. So I'm not like, they'll have to fit that all in. So I'm surprised with the big time jumps that they're doing so far.
I actually, something that I wrote down, kind of change gear though. I don't know if they talked about this in the first episode, but like Renira serving the wine, is there a reason why they have the princess serving the wine for these people? I was very confused as to what her role was, or if that was ever explained as to why she's the one doing that.
I don't think so. Like she's just like the cupbearer, right? Which I think could be anything. Like maybe her father just wanted her to listen.
Yeah, or be close, or have people he trusted maybe in the room. I don't think they ever went into why though she was in that position.
Yeah,
because it does seem a little strange to have a princess as the cupbearer, but I'm not sure.
Maybe they changed it after that. You know what I mean? But she shouldn't be the cupbearer at this point because she was named the heir, so she should actually be sitting at the table at this point. Right. So it's interesting.
Which brings up, how did you guys feel when she like actually shared her opinion at the table?
Well, just showed the dynamic, right? Like they don't really care if she's named the heir or not. At the end of the day, they don't really believe that or want that, I should say.
Yeah, throughout this episode, it almost feels like everybody's just treating this as a formality or just like a family squabble between Daemon and Viserys, or just the fact, Viserys doesn't have a male heir. So a lot of what's happening in this episode is just talking about the future of Viserys and if he's going to marry and then produce more children, or conceive more. I guess produce is not the right word, but Renira jumps in here and says, we have dragon riders. We should send them and show force. And Corlys is happy about this, but everybody else is pretty much like, why don't you just go like play with the Kingsguard and leave the men to their bidding? So that you could tell that these men do not respect her or take her seriously whatsoever.
Absolutely not.
Yeah. No, I totally agree with that. It was very interesting to see, because I feel like we're going to see a lot more scenes of this, like Renira trying to like assert like her voice in, which I think it's interesting to see that side of her. So I hope we do keep seeing scenes of like Renira trying to put some influence, which throughout this episode, it does seem like she influences her father a little bit. So maybe we'll see more of her like getting more say throughout the season.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm actually really liking so far what they're doing with her character. And I know it is 6 months in the future, but it does feel like she's trying to step into that leadership position a little bit. And if you kind of put her next to Daenerys, and we're thinking, back to Game of Thrones and what we've seen of the Targaryens thus far, we didn't get to see that journey from Daenerys. It was just like the minute that we met her, she was like, I'm going to be the ruler, I'm the heir, I'm this, I'm that, I'm whatever. I want my dragons. And then she's like, I want to break the wheel. But here I feel like we're getting to see this, we're going to see Renira really come into her own and learn how to be a leader and what's important to her. So I really like that we get to see another female character in the Targaryen family and get to see more of her character growth versus just like, oh, one day she's just burning down a city with her dragon. No real explanation as to how she got there.
Yeah, we're gonna get a real progression of like Targaryen leaders, you know what I mean, instead of all of this madness, but over a couple years. But this, we get a progression over like, I think I don't know how many years, but like, all these years to see. We'll see how she ends up in the end, but at least we can see it from the beginning, which is nice. Yeah,
I love that.
Agreed.
Yeah, so then after that, we follow Renira to the Kingsguard. I guess it's just kind of like almost like a trial or like a sort of like a group interview, I guess we can say. And all of the men from all of the houses are stepping up, and they're all basically just tourney knights that have not faced war. They've just been in tournaments, and one of them, captured a poacher. So they haven't really had a lot of real world experience. And it seems like a lot of this is due to, what Raina said last week in the first episode about how, these men have never known war. So, she kind of said that at the tournament. We get Sir Criston Cole, and he steps up and he says he's the son of the steward of Lord Blackhaven, and he fought against the Dornish incursions and was knighted after those battles. And she immediately is like, okay, I'm picking you. Like, you actually have battle experience. Obviously, they have a little bit of a thing going on. We don't really know what their relationship is going to turn out to be, but we know that they have history from the first episode, and she sees him again. And Otto is like, well, I think you need to chill for a second, because we have all of the, like, yeah, he's great, but we have all of these other noble houses that are allies to the crown. And she, again, really asserts herself, and she's like, shouldn't my father have the protection by a man who's actually faced combat instead of these kind of like tournament knights? And he backs down, and Criston Cole gets the position.
Yeah, I think it makes sense. He proved himself in the tournament. He took down Daemon in the tournament and stuff. Yeah, with all those other noble houses, like, they've seen nothing compared to, the people who are actually, like, I'm not sure where his family is from or whatever, but if it's like an ally family, then they're probably the higher ups. So they've seen nothing, they've done just little jousting and whatever, but this person's probably seen some actual combat and stuff. So I think it makes sense choosing that person for sure.
I think it definitely makes sense her choosing the Sir Criston Cole. And yeah, I mean, even from the first episode, like, since he was the one who beat Daemon in the like jousting fight, they kind of really brought it up that he would be like an important figure in the story. We're still not sure how, like you said, Katie, like, is it a love interest? I don't know, because is the age gap crazy? Because he looks like he's like probably mid-20s. We learned she's 15. Like, is it a love interest?
We'll talk about the age gaps.
Well, we're gonna get into age gaps.
We will get into age gaps for sure.
We'll see what his role turns out to be throughout the series. But something else I wanted to mention that I thought was really funny, because I feel like Game of Thrones doesn't normally do comedy. When they like zoomed in on the stepping stool that Renira was on, I was like, oh, look, a little comedic moment for Game of Thrones. That was different. I thought that was pretty funny when they like zoomed in on that.
Yeah, I love that. I love that too. And I kind of like that it seemed like she was like trying to be this big bad leader, but she like really is a little girl standing on a step stool.
She's 15.
Yes. And I think, at this part, I also think it's interesting because we see what Otto is focused on is like, these are the allies. This is what's going to help us politically. And she's like, no, I want to protect my family. I want to protect the king. And it seems like she's really, thinking more like we have to protect our house and we have to protect the king and the kingdom. And he's just more like, let's get our allies in place and kind of playing more chess and moving these people around like chess pieces, which is interesting.
True Westeros born person, because people in Essos are very like family strong, kingdom strong, like blood, all that kind of stuff. And then the Westeros is all about power, balance of power. How do I get power kind of deal. And you can see that with that. Like Dany, at the end of the day, wanted the power, but she spent so much time like building actual trust within communities and stuff around her so that they would build an army and have trust in her and whatever else. So, the council came in a bit later, right? When the Targaryens came over from Essos. So, it's just funny, the dynamic between the two.
Yeah, definitely. And while this is going on, Rhaenys,
I think.
Rhaenys.
The cousin?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, I would say like Rains, or I don't even know. It's hard.
Know.
Yeah.
I have no idea.
So many R's.
I know. Is kind of just watching, and you can tell that she's very interested in Rhaenyra's just the situation that she's in, because obviously there are a ton of parallels with her, and she knows how it turned out for her. So it seems like she just has a vested interest to see what happens with Renira moving forward. So then after this, we see Viserys, talking about the history of Valyria. It was built inside of a volcano, or around, like in a volcano essentially. And the dragon lords lived at the face of the volcano. He says closest to the power. And we see who he's talking to, and he is talking to Allison. And he's built this huge model of Valyria, and he's just, here when it's revealed that he's talking to Allison, it's very clear that they have built a bond and a relationship since the last episode when Otto encouraged her to go to his chambers. So it seems that relationship is really picked up, as we see. And he's showing her, a dragon figure, and he drops it and it breaks. And when he drops it, he has like his finger is in a bandage, which seems like it came from that stab wound that he got from the throne in the first episode, which is not a good sign that it has not healed in 6 months. Like, that's not great. Not a great look. So that's pretty interesting. And Allison picks it up. So it seems like maybe he's even, I don't know if they were trying to tell us that he was having trouble holding it and that the injuries that he has are starting to weigh on him, or if it was just an accident, slippery fingers. I'm not really sure. But she scooped it right up.
Yeah.
What do you guys think about this relationship that's forming?
I hate it.
Yeah, I hate it too. I hate it too.
Icky as hell.
Ugh.
He's an old man. She's like 15, 16 maybe. Like,
yeah.
But I feel like that's just what happened in, like, if you look at like medieval times and whatever, like that was just a thing. You know, like age was 14, I think, right?
Yeah,
or
I
they
think
at
so.
least said that.
Yeah.
Or it comes up later at least, but like I feel very icky about it, but it's like almost like grooming, because it's like the 6 months that they've like bonded. Mm-hmm. But it's like, it's not even him grooming, it's like her father.
Dad.
Yeah.
I don't even know who's grooming who here. Like, this is crazy.
Right.
It's just so wild that it's even considered like, oh, this child basically is gonna be your wife, like, or could be, or whatever. It's like your companion. Yeah. But like your father sent you in to do this. Like, I don't know. I feel icky about it. Like, maybe she was older, but again, I think if you think of medieval times, like this was the thing. Mm-hmm. So makes sense, I guess. But I hate it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hate it too. And like, I don't think they've done anything like, like
no, it doesn't seem
sex
like that
or anything yet. And I hope hopefully we don't get there, which obviously the way we'll talk when the episode ends, but like maybe we will, unfortunately. But yeah, it's not a good bond. Like, it doesn't feel right. I don't like watching it. But like Chanelle said, maybe I gotta look at it with a different lens of medieval times, and like that's what happened back then or during those times or in this fiction world. But yeah, it's not a good relationship to watch blossom, if that's the word we want to use.
Yeah. I almost feel like, I know I don't actually feel bad for Viserys, but I almost do, because it feels like he's so desperate for like someone that he can talk to and trust. And he just, obviously he feels like he can do that with Allison, but even her intentions, like whether it's her intentions or her father's intentions, aren't necessarily to purely just create a relationship with him. There's like some, this power dynamic at play with Otto and him sending her to the king. And it's just gross all around. And even though it does feel like Viserys is grooming Allison, it feels like Otto is grooming them both into joining this relationship. It's just gross. Very Littlefinger as well. Last week I felt like Otto gave me more Tywin vibes, and now I'm just getting like pure Littlefinger from him.
I'm annoyed because like, how clueless is this king?
I know.
How do you not see this?
Hello? Yeah. It's rough.
Like, your wife dies, and then all of a sudden, Otto's daughter's all up in your business.
Exactly.
Right.
Hello? Like, are you dense?
Yeah. So he starts asking her how Renira is, and it seems as though they have not been speaking much since her mother passed and his wife passed. And Allison says, it'll take time for her. It did when she lost her own mother. And he says, I wish she would approach me, which, like, what? You can't even approach this is like, you are a weak person. You can't even approach your own daughter. So Allison said, well, why don't you approach her? And he says, there are times that I would rather face the Black Dread himself than face my daughter of 15, which is just like, what? I don't know. What?
Come on.
Yeah. Let's get it together, Viserys. You got to get it together. Something's like not clicking here. Get it together. Yeah. Really.
Men in medieval times, I should say.
And then he clearly says to her, you don't tell Renira that we have our conversations, do you? And he just says, it's just that I feel like she wouldn't understand, you know, our relationship or our bond or whatever. And she says no. So interesting. He obviously does not want Renira to know. She's obviously not telling Renira. So even though they have this really close relationship, she is keeping some of these things a secret. And then we see in the next scene in the Sept that she kind of manipulates Renira a little bit based on what Viserys was talking to her about. So it's, where does Allison's loyalties lie?
Her father.
Yeah.
Her duty.
I'm not sure it's in her father. I think Allison is going to be one of those interesting characters that we're going to see develop over time. And I feel like she's going to have to like have that like struggle of picking Renira or her father. And we're going to see like that dynamic develop over time. I don't think Allison's necessarily on Otto's side.
Yeah, I feel like she is right now, because she would
right now.
She would tell, you know, Renira about all these things if she wasn't on her father's side. I don't know if she'll switch, because like now she's, well, actually we haven't got there yet. So anyway. But anyway, she's friends with the king currently. So
yeah, it almost feels like she's on his side the most out of
that's
anybody.
what I mean. Like I feel like she's developed a friendship with the king, so she's on the king's side more than anyone.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. So the next scene is Renira and Allison walking through the Sept, which is beautiful. I feel like the last time we saw the Sept, it was blowing up in wildfire. So it's nice to see it kind of at its full capacity with these beautiful candles everywhere. It's just really just striking visually. And we hear again that it's been 6 months since the queen has passed, and they're already trying to marry Viserys to another woman to provide him a different heir. And Allison tells Renira, you cannot worry at the matter of lords and kings, which is kind of like, well, she's going to be a queen, so why shouldn't she worry? Like, I don't know. I was like a little bit like, ma'am, what?
What else is new?
Yeah. And so she says, what if the king was to remarry? Viserys loves you and chose you as his heir. And she said, he didn't choose me. He spurns demon. So it feels like even 6 months later, she doesn't feel like his intentions were really because he trusted in her as a leader. It really was more just to get back at his brother because of what he said about his son and his wife. So I thought that was interesting.
Yeah.
They do pray here, and Allison encourages her to pray and connect with her mother. And I feel like the scene was also just really visually beautiful. And Renira is silently praying, and she gets emotional, and she just says she wants to be seen as more than just a little girl by her father. And Allison then drops a little seed as planted by Viserys in their earlier conversation, and just says, you know, you should approach your father and talk to him, basically. And she does.
Yeah, I think that was good on her. Like, I know the king asked for it, but I think even as a friend, like, she just wants her to, you know, talk to her father, because, you know, it's her friend. She doesn't want her to fight with her father. I feel like she's close with her father. Like, you know, yeah, the seed is there, but yeah, that was good of her to do that.
Yeah, no, I think this is more like of like what I was saying earlier of like Allison. Like I think in this moment she was actually trying to be a friend and not trying to be like manipulative. So I feel like we're gonna keep seeing situations where Allison's gonna be in these like weird moments where like, do I have to pick where the side I have to pick? And like I think it's gonna be interesting to see how she balances it. So, and this was just one other instance of where like, okay, Allison is showing a different side of her than just listening to her father.
Yeah. I thought this was interesting because I feel like she kept giving her like these little sly looks and stuff too. So part of me feels like, yes, she was like, overall, she's being a good friend, but I do feel like maybe there were some underlying motivations there, maybe like a 50-50 or a 70-30 of really trying to look out for Renira, but also just keeping the other things at the top of her mind. But I'm interested to see. Javier, we talked last week and we're not talking spoilers here. But I've been interested to like, I've been holding myself back from Googling to see like where all of these people end up, because I know obviously the material is out there and I'm trying my hardest and I have not done it yet, but I'm really curious. Allison is one that I'm very curious to see where she ends up. So yeah, I think she's gonna be an interesting one.
Agreed.
Then we see Corlys and Viserys, along with Rhaenys, walking outside in the kingdom, and we see just apologies from both sides from what happened earlier at the small council meeting. And Viserys, Corlys apologizes to him as well, and Viserys wants to confirm how much their allyship between the houses means. And Corlys openly shares his concerns, and he's basically saying, like, we're in a weakened state right now. The queen just passed. Your brother has moved on and has been unanswered in claiming Dragonstone. You didn't challenge him at all. You just let him do it. You have named a girl to the heir of the Iron Throne, and a foreign power now is building an economy or establishing economy in the strongest port for the kingdom. So you're weak right now. So that's my concern. And Viserys is kind of like, well, this is you're painting a little bit of a negative portrait of my reign.
Yeah.
Which, like, yeah, what did he lie about though? Is he lying?
That was
Where's
funny
the lie?
when he said that.
That was so funny. I was like, listen, you're weak. Like, what?
Yeah, I mean, he wasn't
What are you
wrong.
doing?
Yeah,
What are you doing?
It was like a self-clock. Like, you let other people clock you. Viserys clocked his own raid. He's like, are you trying to separate his shit? Like, what's going on here?
Yeah, I mean, when the facts are there, the facts are there. You can't argue with facts.
Facts are
Viserys, you
facts.
can't. Yeah,
Listen, Corlys did this, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right. So, like, honestly, if we think about it, like, I feel like he would have been a great king.
Yeah.
In the long run, because like really strong.
Yeah.
And doesn't let people. I feel like he doesn't let people tell him what he needs to do, for the most part. But no, he clocked it when he said that. I laughed out loud so hard because I was just like, yeah, it just shows that you're weak. Like you're doing the bare minimum that you need to
if
be
even
king.
that. Like,
You're
is he
doing the
doing
bare
anything?
minimum. Yeah, let's send a ship. Like,
Right.
take them out.
Right.
What are you doing? You
You have
have
dragons.
you literally have dragons, and even Renira was like, why don't we just send a dragon? I'm so confused why you just don't send a dragon rider and wipe them all out. Like,
Yeah.
just
Even if you
show
don't want to
power.
openly do that, send a dragon to just circle overhead and, like, light a ship on fire. That's all. You don't need to kill
Intimidate them
anybody.
a
Just
little
light a
bit.
ship on fire. Yeah, just be a little bit intimidating, but you just don't do anything to show strength in the kingdom. Of course you're going to look weak.
Yeah,
and Rhaenys
exactly.
agrees here, actually, and she's like, the crown is seen as vulnerable. And Corlys says a really great line here. To elude a storm, you can either steer into it or around it, but you must never await its coming, which I really liked, because he's like, you have to strike first, basically, and you have to really establish yourself.
100%.
Viserys is just a little wet rag. He's not doing it. He's just like, he's like a wet pair of socks that, like, if you get stuck in the rain and your socks get wet, that's
The worst
what I feel
feeling.
like. The worst feeling, the absolute worst feeling. So from there, Corlys proposes that they join their houses and he wed their daughter, Laena. He says, we're the two surviving Valyrian houses with the Targaryen dragons and the Valyrian fleet bound in blood. You can show the crown. The strongest days are to come. This girl's young, by the way, extremely young. And Viserys says it's only been half a year and that he has not thought about remarrying. He's clearly still mourning his wife. And we talked about it in the first episode. Like, he loves her, obviously. And I'm sure there's guilt weighing on him heavily that she passed in childbirth because she was trying to produce him an heir and she had all of these complications. So he's going through it. You know, he's definitely still in mourning. But Rhaenys reminds him that the realm expects him to take a new heir sooner or later to produce more, to take a new wife to produce more heirs. So
Of course they do.
no one's really buying that Renira is going to be the queen here. Everybody's basically like, yeah, okay, but, like, when are you going to have a boy? You need to remarry so you can have a boy.
Yeah, no, they're rushing him so that he can produce an actual male heir, straight up. Because why do you need more heirs? You have an heir, but you know they don't. And the cousin, does the cousin talk to Renira at this point, or is that afterwards?
That's a little bit later on when she's walking through.
Okay, so I won't talk about that just yet. But yeah, like, you know, after what happened with her father coming to power, that they obviously don't want a woman in power. So, like, you know, they're just kind of brushing it away at this point.
Yeah, it was almost like it was a formality that they were like, yeah,
totally.
okay. Anyway, Yeah. When's the
Anyways,
real heir
moving
gonna
on.
come?
Yeah, when's the heir here? Like,
right. Yeah, that's cute. But anyway.
It was just twisted to me. Like this girl, I think she's 12, and like
she's 12.
This man is pitching her 12-year-old to marry the king. It's just too much for me. Like the Targaryens are wild. We saw this in Game of Thrones. The Targaryens doing wild incestuous shit. Now the cousin, like it's too much for me. Like I was like,
I do not care.
We can't keep doing this. Is this just a Targaryen thing? Like what's going on here?
Yeah, and I was reading a little bit about, or I not reading so much because I don't, like I said, I don't want to get spoiled, but I did hear a few things about how Corlys and his family have been really married off to the Targaryens and just, reproducing with them and mating with them. I mean, like they're animals. I don't know I don't know how to like properly say, but like, they've been married, having relations for a long time and having kids. So their families are very closely intertwined and they have a lot of Targaryen blood in them as well. So I think that's why they're just saying, like they're the purest of the Valyrian bloodlines, because it's basically just like their blood is mixed together. It's the two huge Valyrian houses. So pretty interesting, gross stuff here. But let's not get it twisted. Rhaenys is like, yeah, marry my 12-year-old. We're good. Her mother
marry
too.
My 12-year-old.
Yeah.
Rhaenys is basically saying, I couldn't get power. I'll get power through my daughter. Like
exactly.
That's the vibes I'm getting from Rhaenys in this instant.
Yes, same. And Corlys too. It's like they just want to power grab. They see him as weak. Let's have him marry our little girl and she can be queen, and then we'll just basically be able to control everything that goes on. So
pretty much
not great. And then after this scene, we do see a dinner between Viserys and Renira. So it does look like she approached him. She took Allison's advice. And it seems a little awkward. They're sitting in silence for a little bit. And then Renira says, we haven't really spoken much since Mother has passed. And Viserys says that that's a regret of his and they should be free to speak your minds. And they both say, I loved your mother very much. And Renira says, as did I. So it's like, they're obviously both still thinking a lot. And he just does not know what to say to her or how to handle the situation. He's like he's just bad at everything. I feel bad because he doesn't seem like a bad guy. Like he seems nice, but he just has no backbone whatsoever with his daughter, with the council, as a king. Like he just is always doing the wrong thing, it feels like, or doing nothing, which in turn ends up being the wrong thing. It's rough to watch for our guy Viserys.
Very poor guy.
Does it to himself.
Yeah. He does do it to himself. I know, we can't feel too bad. So she fills him in a little bit on the tourney night situation, tells him about Kristen Cole, and he says, okay, great, like he'll be a great addition to the Kingsguard. And then she tries to discuss what happened at the small council, and again he says, you're young, pay it no mind, you'll learn. And it's just kind of like, I didn't feel like she was apologizing. I felt like she was trying to again say like, this is why I feel like this is the right decision. He was just like, yeah, don't worry, you're young, you'll learn, it's all good.
Yeah, I agree. I felt like it was her trying to like get her point, like use her voice and get her point across, and he was just dismissing her again. And it's just like, it's tired. Like you got to listen to somebody. If you're gonna listen to anybody, I think maybe Renira is the person who you should be taking a sliver of advice from, because all these other people are leading you astray, sir. So maybe your daughter might be the one who you should be listening to. She's
the only one actually giving you advice to help you, other than, gain more power in some sort of way. Like it's only about family for her at the end of the day.
Right. She has no ulterior motives. Like what ulterior motives does she have? She's steering him in the direction that makes the most sense for him. But he does not see it, unfortunately, or he doesn't care. Next we get to the maggot scene, which was so disgusting. For me, I just can't. In my notes, I wrote maggots. Nope. In all caps. And then I wrote, this is disgusting. But they're trying to save his finger. So obviously whatever's been happening to him with these injuries not healing and these wounds not healing and festering, is still going on. And the Grand Maester says, we're trying to save the finger from rot, basically. We're trying to save the digit. So he just puts his hand in his maggots, and I guess the maggots, I don't know what they're doing, sucking the infection out. I have no idea. I was just like, nope, I can't even look at this. It's disgusting. But while his hand is in these maggots, Otto's here, and Viserys is filling Otto in about the marriage proposal from Corlys, and the reasoning behind it. And Otto pretty much is like, that's a huge overreach, and this needs to be discussed with the council, which I thought was interesting because like the council needs to decide who this man marries. Like, you can't even make a decision about who you're going to get married to without the small council reviewing it and
There's
telling
just
you
so
what to
many
do.
politics. There's just so many politics involved in every little thing with this council.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Which I get why the council is put in place. It's put in place so that the rest of the kingdoms are happy with the decision, because but it's just like such a hindrance on every single little thing.
Right.
Yeah, no, I agree. Like, it's kind of like I feel like the council's like the whole like checks and balances thing. Like, have somebody to like, you know, so he doesn't go like completely Mad King type of vibe, you know. So I get the purpose, like you said, but like at the same time, like, damn, can Viserys think? Like, can they give him some breathing room? They don't even let him pitch an idea. It's like every idea he has is from somebody. Like, maybe let Viserys think a little. I don't know.
Exactly. And I feel kind of bad for him because he just is trying to get advice. Like, he just wants to talk to somebody, and they're all like, oh, the council, or like, oh, this family this, or like, oh, this person's gonna get pissed. And it's just like, can I just like talk to somebody? And that's why I think he gets along obviously so well with Allison, even though who knows if she's taking this information elsewhere or not. But Otto says, you know, these matters should be discussed, and Viserys says, that's what I'm doing currently. And Otto does not seem happy. Says Leon is young. And the Maester, though, the Grand Maester, says, actually, I think this is a good idea. Like, this can heal the breach that was made at the small council earlier and would strengthen the houses by joining the two strong Valyrian houses together. And Viserys is just worried about what Renira might think. And the Grand Maester said, doesn't matter. You need to propagate a new heir anyway. So, like, you need to propagate a new line. So it doesn't matter what she thinks. And it's like, fuck you, dude. Like, fuck this Grand Maester. I feel like all the other Maesters we know, other than that one, like, really creepy Maester who made the mountain into the zombie mountain, whose name I'm forgetting, that was friends with Cersei. All the Maesters I feel like have been cool, except for this guy's just a douche.
I forget what that Maester's name was.
But he was like disgraced anyway, right? He was like kicked out.
Q something.
Creepy one.
Yeah.
Qyburn.
Qyburn, yes. Thank you. Yes.
He was a creepo.
Yes.
They didn't even show how crazy Qyburn was. Like, the books, he was like,
ooh, really?
So insane. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Oh my God. Yeah, he was so much worse in the books. But, you know, they showed a little bit, but he was much creepier in the books. Oh my goodness.
Wow.
I can imagine. Imagine it got pretty twisted.
Oh yeah.
He's the only other Maester that I'm like, I'm out on this guy, but I'm definitely out on this Maester too. This Maester. He seems just like an ass.
They kicked him out, like, and she's like, I'm gonna take you right in.
Literally.
We have the same personality. Let's go.
So Otto mentions here to Viserys, and this is where I really was like, okay, this is Littlefinger 2.0 here, is where he says he couldn't imagine having to replace his wife that he loved just for duty's sake. And he said, you were the king, but I do not envy you. And I just feel like the way he acted this scene, or the way it was directed, and just the face that he was making, and it just seems so disingenuous. And it just seemed like he was truly like master manipulating Viserys here. And it felt like Viserys kind of almost felt it too. Like it felt like he didn't take that to heart as much as maybe Otto hoped that he did. But it just feels like Viserys for sure is he's got his suspicions up about everybody around him. Seems a little paranoid. Rightfully so.
I think that's totally fair.
Yeah. And it's funny that you mentioned that. Right here at this scene, I wrote Otto equals Littlefinger down. Like, with
oh my God.
I was like, this is Littlefinger down to a T right here. Like, this is big Littlefinger energy. So I definitely agree with that.
Yep. I wrote total Littlefinger vibes. That was what I wrote in my notes about this part. From here, we see Viserys walking with Lena down in the, I don't know what this area of the kingdom is called, but it's a nice garden, probably the gardens or something. And she's asking him this is just so, like, she's so tiny and she looks so, I thought she was younger than 12. I thought when I heard she was 12, I was like, oh, I was expecting her to be like 9 or 10. She just looks like a little girl. And it's just, he's so much taller than her. It just looks like he's walking with a child, because he is walking with a child. So it's just almost feels outlandish to imagine that he would marry her. And she's asking him a few questions about riding Balerion, the dragon, the Black Dread, and that, you know, with his death, he's the last dragon that was tied to Valyria, or I guess Viserys mentions that, and she mentions that Vhagar is still living out there somewhere, but is too large for the dragon pit. So this is, I read a little bit and heard a little bit about Vhagar, and I guess he's just a dragon, or she's a dragon, that just took off and made a home somewhere, and nobody really knows where she is. But she said, Lena said that the workers at Spice Town hear her song at times and they say that it's sad. And he said, I imagine even dragons get lonely. And I was like, poor Vhagar.
Then come home.
Yeah, come home. Maybe we'll see her one day. I don't know. And she stops there in her tracks and basically says, Your Grace, it would be great honor to join our houses, and she would bear him many children. And he says, is that what your father told you to say? And she doesn't say anything. And he says, what did your mother tell you? And she said that I wouldn't have to bed you until I turned 14. And I was like, this makes me want to jump out a window. This makes me want to jump out a window.
Vile.
Horrible.
I cringed. I was like, take this off. Like, I don't want to watch this right now. This is so bad right now.
She's a child.
A little girl. Luckily, though, it seems like Viserys is like, this is sick. Like, it doesn't seem like he's interested in this at all. He's not like chomping at the bit for this poor 12-year-old, thankfully. Because he sighs and they continue walking, but it's just like, ugh. We see Renira looking on from the kingdom, and this is the scene you had mentioned before, Chanelle. And Rhaenys is there, and she says to Renira, it bothers you, does it not? And she basically, Renira says back to her, like, does it bother you? She's our daughter, princess. Like, does it bother you? And she says, of course it bothers me, but I understand the order of things, and I'm not sure you do. And I feel like we get a really great juxtaposition here between kind of like the old tradition and how the world is moving, or how at least Renira and even Viserys, by appointing her as the heir, are trying to move things. And she says, when I become queen, I'll create a new order of things. And Rhaenys basically says, like, I wish that could be true, but the men of the realm already had their opportunity to name a queen and they denied it. And it's like, she's obviously still salty about this, and she's still stuck in this and doesn't feel like there could ever be a change because of what happened to her. And Renira says a great line here and basically says, they denied you, Rhaenys, the queen who never was, but they bent the knee to me, and basically confirmed me as heir. And Rhaenys says back, do you remind your father's men of that as you carry their cups? Which I was like, oof. She got you there. She got you there, Renira. She got you there. Pretty rough.
No, Rhaenys is jaded, as she should be, because she has seen the order of things for many years. It's really bit her in the butt. She also lives with someone who's also super jaded, which is Corlys. Yeah. So the jadedness just travels in that family. So, I feel like she just, like, they both want that power back, and the only way they could get that power back possibly is by marrying their daughter to it, unfortunately. But yeah, I can see where she's coming from. But she should be supporting. She should be like, maybe she's just trying to warn, her of what might come, so she's prepared and not disappointed. But I think she's just jaded in general.
Yeah, no, I agree. I also love that line, the queen who never was. I was like, okay, you better clock
queen
her.
That never quick. Was. Yeah,
that was a really good line. But also this was a scene where Renira, like, this was giving me big Daenerys energy.
Yes,
like,
me too.
Creating a new order, like, break the wheel. Like, this was like Daenerys. So I just was picturing Daenerys saying this, like, 100%. Like, I mean, Renira does obviously have some qualities, in my opinion, of Daenerys. But she's not like Daenerys in either, but like, she has some qualities, and this was one of those scenes where I was like, oh, I see Daenerys in you. Like, I see that energy in you.
Yes, totally. I totally agree. I had the same opinion, and I'm loving Renira so far, just as a character. Like, I think she's just super interesting, and I think she is seemingly growing into a really great leader, and she has just really great instincts. So I'm excited to see, especially once we flash forward, and we see her as the older version of herself. I'm just excited to see just who she ends up becoming as a character, because I think she's really great so far. And I'm a jerk, and I didn't look up the actor who plays her, but she's killing it. I think her name starts with an E, Emmy something, or Ellie something like that. But she's doing great. Millie something, I don't know, whatever. But she's doing a great job, so shout out to her. But Rhaenys says back to her, men would rather put the realm to the torch than see a woman ascend the Iron Throne, and your father's no fool.
correct.
And she wasn't wrong in her day. So, like, maybe she's not wrong now. You know, I think time is going to just have to tell, because these are obviously just two different generations of women who both had the same feeling and ideals, but one can potentially move forward and one obviously didn't. So we'll see what happens there.
And Viserys might be a little bit of a fool, though. So
yeah, like, in what world is her father not a fool?
Yeah, she might be wrong there. I think Viserys is a little bit of a fool.
I think he's like a lot of a bit of a fool.
A
so
little
far
bit
that
of a
we've
fool.
seen.
Major fool.
The man is lost. He's lost. He is lost. Speaking of our guy Viserys, we see him again spending some time with Allison, having a meal, and he's confiding in her again. Like, it's just like he's just unloading on her. He needs a therapist. He's using Allison as his therapist. There probably weren't therapists back in the day, whatever year this was, but he obviously feels like she's the only one that he can trust. And it feels like he's being truly honest with her, and it just feels like he's just reaching out to every single person that he can, and she's the only one that's even kind of listening to him. She's not really giving him much advice. She's just saying, like, yeah, Lena would be a great queen. She's kind. But he's like, yeah, she's young. I mean, like, I don't know. She's also picking her fingers. We see again that she's picking her fingers under the table. I don't know if this is because she's just stressed out about talking to him or the situation, or if her father has put kind of like this duty on her to be his next wife, and she's like stressing that this other stuff is happening. I don't really know yet what the root of this stress is from her. I don't know if you guys have any ideas.
Anxiety.
Yeah, for sure.
Of everything.
Yeah.
There's a lot of pressure.
Definitely a lot of pressure.
Agreed.
Yeah. So she gives him a gift, and she had the stonemasons fix the dragon figure that he dropped. And he's clearly touched by this gesture. I don't know when the last time anybody did anything nice for this man is, but obviously this was something nice that was unprompted, that she didn't have to do, and maybe had to do with a little bit of manipulation. Maybe she did it because she really was trying to be nice, and maybe feels bad for him a little bit. But he's really touched and just says, this is really kind. And then her father comes in and is like, he didn't seem surprised to see her there. So I guess they obviously talked. He probably sent her up to the room. And he says he called an emergency small council meeting.
Right.
So here's where we get down to business. We see the Dragon Keeper speaking in Valyrian, which I know we talked about last week. We love that they're kind of keeping this language alive. It's very cool. Letting them know that Prince Daemon stole a dragon egg, and he left a note that he's getting married. He's having a baby, and he took this dragon egg to put it in the baby's crib. And he's getting married in 2 days, and you're invited if you want to come, which that's really short notice in like 2022 real life, but it feels like it's way shorter notice back when there's no cars and no planes. I mean, I guess I have dragons. So
they have dragons
there,
to fly.
Yeah.
He wanted it to happen quick, I guess. So, hey, just give you a heads up, it's happening.
Right.
Yeah.
And this happened about like halfway through the episode, and we had been notably Daemonless up until this point. But he made his mark on us this week, as he did last week as well. And Corlys is like, who is Lady Mysaria of Dragonstone? And he's like, oh, and Otto's like, Daemon's whore. Like, he calls her a whore like 17 times in this episode, which is just so rude. And Corlys reminds the king the realm is watching. And Viserys is like, what would you have me do? Send him to the wall? Put his head on a spike? Like, obviously he's not going to do that. It's his brother. But pretty much Daemon's just kind of like unchecked at this point, just wreaking havoc. So he had Dragonstone for 6 months, and now he's just like taking it up a notch and is like, actually, I'm just going to steal a dragon's egg and bring it back. And he just seems like he's trying to provoke his brother.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a question. Have they spoken about Daemon's other wife? I didn't even know he had one wife. Has she?
Yeah, they did in the first
episode.
They're like,
she
go
make an
back to your
appearance?
wife. No, not yet.
Okay, she hasn't made an appearance. Okay, that's probably why I didn't
She's in the Vale, and they mentioned her, and he basically doesn't like her.
Yeah, it seems like he hates her.
Yeah, he was like basically forced to marry her, which I don't think you can force Daemon to do anything really.
Yeah, kind of surprising.
Yeah. But yeah, honestly, like, I think he's just trying to cause a stir. Like, because I don't know if you're going to mention it, Katie, who the egg, because basically, Viserys was just like, "Okay, whatever." But then when it was mentioned like who who the egg was originally going to, that's when he was like, "Oh hell no!"
Yes.
Oh,
he was trying to
no.
provoke him.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. Yep. Renira says, pretty much interrupts and says in Valyrian, you know, which egg did he take? And the dragon keeper or dragon keeper, I guess, says he took the egg for Dreamfire, the one that Renira chose to put in Balon's crib, which was her brother. So the king is like, okay, fuck this, I'm going. Like, we're going. This is not cool. And Otto's like, no, you stay here. I don't want to put you at risk. Like, I'm gonna go. I don't know what Otto's motivation here was. Obviously, this is not a good idea.
Dragons everywhere. Why?
Like, did you forget? Did you forget, Otto? I don't understand here. And he goes with like 10 guys. Like, it doesn't even feel like he's going with a lot of people when he shows up there.
Hello, I've come to die.
Yeah,
going.
Yeah, I don't understand what his thinking was here. But before that, he's prepping to go to Dragonstone. He sees Allison's hands and he says, "You're the most comely girl at court," which comely, I take that. That to me sounds like homely, but I guess he's saying that she's beautiful. I don't really know, but that's what it seemed like he was saying. Never heard that before. It says, "Why do you destroy yourself?" Because her hands are just destroyed because of she's just picking and picking. And then he says, "Will you see the king tonight?" And it's like, do you care why she's doing it? Because look at what you're doing.
Yeah, you don't give an F about her.
Yeah, you don't give a shit. So this guy sucks, basically. But he's going with Kristen Cole and some others to Dragonstone. And we get a really awesome scene of them approaching Dragonstone. And I feel like we never really got to see Dragonstone in this light before. Like, every time we've seen it, it's been like abandoned. It's been kind of like just kind of crappy looking. Not crappy, but like seems like it's just been neglected. And here it just seems very grand when we approach it, which I thought was really cool.
Yeah, no, it looks awesome. And I love all the smoke.
Yeah.
Because of probably all the warmth from the dragons and stuff. Like, it's really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I thought it was a great shot, and like the panning of like the big castle, and I really enjoyed it. I thought it was like, it made it seem very grandiose and like, oh, Daemon has a very important place. It's not like a little side town. It's not like a little baby rock. No, Daemon is like, this is a very important place for Daemon to be at right now. So I gave more power to the scene.
Yeah, totally agree. I feel like when Stannis had it in Game of Thrones, it seemed just like dark and damp and dreary. And then when Daenerys came, it just seemed like some old rundown, nothing really going on. But this makes it just seem, like you said, Javier, just very like grandiose and just kind of, you're right. Like, Daemon has an important place. It's not just some like shack he rolled up on. So Otto and his men approach on this big wall. It almost looks like, I don't know what these are called, but I guess it's just like a big pathway that's on top of a huge wall. I don't know if like castles have an official name for this or not, but if they do, I don't know what it is. And then they meet in the middle, kind of. Daemon is with the Gold Cloaks, Otto is with the Kingsguard and a few others. Some maesters are there, some folks, and they're just going back and forth. And Otto is basically like, relinquish Dragonstone at the king's order. Again, calls Mysaria a whore to her face. She's there. And then Daemon is just like, oh, Sir Crispin. And he's like, Kristen Cole. He's like, right. And he's like, oh, do you remember Crispin. Me? Yeah, Crispin. And he says, do you remember me, basically when I knocked you off your horse? And Daemon finds humor. They have a very humorous like back and forth. And Daemon's just like, very good. Like, he finds humor in it, which I liked this scene. I don't know. I'm kind of liking Daemon, which I don't know if I should be or not, but I kind of am. So
I love Daemon. He's an asshole and I love it.
Yeah. He's just, I like his vibe. So far.
I'm interested in Daemon. I can't say I like him yet, but I am interested to see where his story goes.
I always love the asshole.
Yeah. It seems like there's a lot of Daemon stans on the internet too, which I was kind of surprised by. But
I a Daemon stan.
Yeah, I feel like I'm converting. I don't really know. What I want is for him and Renira to just rule together, not in like a creepy sexual way, but like just like co-rule, because I like them both. Obviously that's not gonna happen. So Otto is just not successful here. Things are escalating. They're taking out their swords and they're pointing them at each other. And then we just see, and we see Daemon's dragon approach kind of like on a cliff nearby, and Otto's like, oh shit, like there's a dragon here. Which, how did you not think that a dragon was going to come and potentially roast you alive? I just don't understand. He kind of relents a little bit and realizes that he's outmatched, and he tells everybody to put the swords away because he doesn't want to go up against a dragon. And then we hear some more dragon calls and dragon sounds, and then we see through the smoke and the clouds, which I thought was another amazing scene. We just see Renira, so good, probably the best scene of the episode. Renira and her dragon just fly up through the clouds. What's the dragon? Cyrax? Is that the dragon's name? Something like that?
I forget what her dragon's name is.
I forget also.
Yeah, I think it's something like that. Fly, and they just land, and they're like, what are you doing here, princess? Treating her like she's a little kid, Otto. And she just pretty much walks by him, and she's like, preventing bloodshed. And she does. She kills it here. She really kills it.
I literally wrote Renira 8, like on her entrance.
She did.
She was 8. Like
she was like to her uncle, come here.
Yeah.
Yes. She was like, okay, I'm the one you need to talk to. Don't worry about these little men.
Don't worry about these morons over here.
Yep.
Especially Otto. He don't want me to talk. No. I'm gonna save Otto's life real quick. Actually,
right. Exactly.
You know? It was great.
Exactly. She did the damn thing here. This whole scene was just from start to finish. She killed it. She walks up and she says, like, this is my castle you're living in. And he basically is like, not until you're of age. And he pretty much says, like, yeah, no, we're not having a child yet. Like, he admits that all of this is a lie. They're not getting married. They're not having kids. And then she pretty much says to me, this is all in Valyrian. And then she says, I'm right here, uncle, the object of your ire, the reason that you were disinherited. If you wish to be restored as heir, you'll need to kill me. So do it and be done with all this bother. And I was like, ugh. Dropped the mic, snaps to Renira. She fucking killed it. He stood there, thought about it for a second, starts to walk away, and just tosses her the egg. She gets the egg back. No one is injured. No one's fighting. Where Otto's there for like 5 minutes, and everybody's pointing swords at each other. So she killed it. And she seems very pleased with herself, too. She knows she did a great job here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. This is because earlier you mentioned how you really enjoy the actress playing Renira. I think this was a great scene for Renira, too. And I do agree, like I said, Renira 8, like this was a great scene of her, but I think the actress did a really good job of showing, like, I feel like you could also see Renira was a little nervous when she said,
I was gonna say that. I was gonna say you could see in her eyes, she was just like don't crack.
He might chop my head off. He might do it, actually. And I thought that like, the actress did an amazing job of conveying both that, like, I'm Renira, I'm gonna have my voice, but at the same time, like, I'm still 15.
I was gonna say she's 15,
and my uncle's a little crazy. Like, you never know if he might chop my head off here.
Yeah.
So that was like, that's why I thought that scene was amazing. Like, the acting was so well done on Renira's part.
She did great, and especially I think you're absolutely right. When she took that egg and she was looking at it, she kind of smiled to herself. It was almost like she was pleased, but also relieved that like it worked. Her plan worked. I think the actress did a really, really great job here. And I really am I love the relationship so far between Daemon and Renira. I know it seems very complicated, obviously because of Viserys, but he really seems to care for her. And she obviously cares for him as well. It's just obviously a fraught relationship right now because of everything going on. And her father and his brother put them at odds just naturally, but I don't think either one of them wants to be at odds with each other.
Yeah. I feel like they have a spot for each other, and like, they have a little soft spot for each other. Yeah, for sure. And it does feel like Daemon, at the end of the day, similar to Renira, similar to Viserys, cares a lot about his family, because we see it later as well when Corlys is talking a little bit about his brother, which we'll get to. But there definitely still seems like there's care there, and he cares about his brother and his niece. So it's all very interesting dynamics. But we do go inside of Dragonstone, and Mysaria is pissed at Daemon. She basically says to him, like, I came to you for safety, and you're putting me in harm's way. Mm-hmm. She was not in on this plan, but she was like, I assured myself that I would never be threatened with childbirth. And you're a Targaryen, and you can afford to play stupid games with your king. I cannot. So she's pretty much like, I don't want your gold. I don't want your power. I wanted to be liberated. And he's pretty much just using her as a pawn here. Mm-hmm. He might think that he loves her and is marrying her for love. They're not
getting married. They're not having a kid. This was all a ruse to get Viserys or get a rise out of everybody. And she's not having it. She does not want to be a pawn in this game.
Yeah, so good for her.
Yeah, good for her.
Yeah. I thought that was a great scene for Mysaria?
Mysaria. Yeah, I think
Mysaria.
So.
I thought it was a great scene. Like, I even wrote down the quote, like you already said, about I never be threatened by childbirth. And like when she said, I came to you to be liberated from fear. Like, I was like, okay, this is like, Mysaria's going to be an interesting character to see her develop as well. Because she's not just going to be like, just do whatever Daemon wants. It seems like she will probably end up having some influence on Daemon's decisions. So it'll be very interesting to see how their relationship continues to develop. Because he seems like he wants to like listen to her, and he does care about her, but he also cares about power. And it's going to be a very interesting dynamic to see how these two develop throughout the season.
Yeah, definitely. I'm excited to see more from her because she's very interesting. I want to hear more about her background. She comes obviously from a different place. She's not from Westeros, it seems. So I'm very interested to see kind of. It seems like she's been in slavery or has been bought and sold a few times. So I'm very curious to see if we hear more about her backstory because she seems like a very strong woman and a very strong character. So and she's not putting up with Daemon shit.
Hell no,
she's not doing it.
Period.
Yeah. While this is all happening, Viserys is just, it seems like this is parallel at the same time. Viserys, we cut back to Viserys and he's just holding his dragon statue. And then he's thinking, and then he goes to Lord Lionel, which I learned his name today, for advice. This guy gives me the weird vibes. I don't know why. Something about him. It just gives me kind of incel vibes. I have no idea why. Apologies to this actor. I just look at him and I'm like, I don't like this guy.
Maybe he's doing a good job.
Yeah, maybe that's what he's supposed to convey. I don't know. Sorry, Lord Lionel. But he does not trust Corlys. He, meaning Viserys, does not trust Corlys and has not since he's taken the throne. He feels like he's just being watched at all times, probably by him and Renira. And he mentions to Lord Lionel that they want to marry Lena off to him. She's 12. She's really young. But Lionel's on the side with everybody else and says, this is a good fit for your family. If you turn off or if you turn down this proposal, Corlys is going to be pissed, and he holds stake to half the realm's ships. And we're on the precipice of war here with the Stepping Stone and the crab feeders and all of the stuff that's going on. He pretty much says you should marry Lena and keep Corlys at your side as a trusted ally. This is not what Viserys wants to hear. He just wants, I feel like at this point, he really just wants someone to be like, hey, I'm going to be your friend here and you do what you want to do and whatever. But he's not getting that. Everybody's looking at this from a political lens and it just feels like he's just tired of it, which, listen, man, you're the king. It's just, you got to, unfortunately, it is what it is for you right now.
Yeah.
He doesn't have a Ned Stark, that's looking out for his best interests. He has a little finger.
Yeah, he has Otto. He's not looking out for his best interests.
No,
not
at all.
Yeah, pretty sad for him. Sorry, Viserys. So pretty much he leaves that conversation saying, whatever, I guess this is what Lord Lionel tells me to do. So then he does get it announced that the princess has returned from Dragonstone. And he's like, excuse me? The princess is returning?
Where did she go?
Wait, what? She hasn't been here? I know I don't talk to her for months on end, but like she went to Dragonstone? And he's pissed. And he says to her, you're my only heir and you could have been killed. And she's like, well, I retrieved the egg without bloodshed and something that I'm not sure that Sir Otto could have done on his own, which she's right. They were about to go to blows with some swords in their hands. So he then says to her, your mother's absence is a wound that we'll never heal. And she says, it pleases me to hear you say this, to know that I'm not alone in my grief. And he just says, I wish I knew what to say to you after her passing. He discusses taking a new wife and says, I can never replace your mother. No more than I intend to replace you as heir, but our line is vulnerable. So it seems like even if he gets married, he's telling her that he intends to keep her as the heir to the throne, which is interesting. He might intend that. Nobody around him who's telling and orchestrating his every move is intending that, which is very obvious. And she's kind of like, yeah, I get it. You're the king and your first duty is to the realm. And it seems like she's giving her his blessing in a way of like, you have to do what you have to do. I get it. I don't think she's prepared for what comes next here. obviously. He didn't fill her in on the whole plan. But here so far, she's kind of co-signing. Like, yeah, I get it. You have to do what you have to do.
Question: was she aware? I don't remember if she was aware that the person he was saying about marrying was his cousin. Like, was she aware of that, or she just?
I think she knew it because she saw them walking in that garden, and then she had that conversation with Rhaenys earlier about like, she's your daughter, you're okay with this. So she kind of knew, I guess, what was happening. I don't know if it was ever fully confirmed.
I think she's the only person right now who's saying, do whatever you want and marry whoever you want, but I'm giving you permission to do so. Like, she's the only one who's saying, you got to do it for the kingdom, you know, and the family and whatever, but she's not telling him who to marry. And I think that might be like the check he needed, you know?
Yep. He just needed one person. He just needed one person to say, like, do whatever you want. I don't think she knew what was about to happen. Obviously, no. I don't think she had any idea what she was just signing up. He did set her up. And poor Renira, I mean, this sucks. The next scene that we see is him looking out the window over the kingdom from the small council. And he's obviously stressed. Like, he's just staring out, has no idea what's going on around him. He's just like very in his head. And everybody comes in and he announces that he's taking a new wife and that he intends to marry. And as this was happening, I was like, he's marrying Allison. I know, I can tell that this is what's about to happen. He's not marrying this little girl. And he says, I intend to marry Allison Hightower before spring's end. And Corlys is like, what the fuck? Are you kidding me? Like, I'm pissed. He storms out. Otto gives Corlys kind of like a look of like, he's pleased, like his plan kind of worked here. Like, sorry, sucks to suck. And Allison is just standing there like picking at her fingers. I don't know if she knew. Do we know if she knew that this was what the plan was? Did he talk to her about this? I guess we'll find out, but
I don't know.
This might be a surprise to her. I don't know.
I knew because I read up on it a bit, but I was like still surprised, I guess. Like,
I had a feel. It seemed like this is where we were headed from not having read or Googled anything. But poor Renira is shocked. And she's just kind of looking at Allison, and she looks at her dad and she storms out, and he's just like, Renira, like, he doesn't think that she's going to be, like, he tries to stop her and she leaves. I mean, what do you think? This is her best friend, and you didn't want her to know that you were even having these meetings with Allison, and now you're announcing that you're going to marry her without giving your daughter a heads up. What is going on here?
I think this is actually like the first. I mean, let me take a step back. I feel like this is the first time that Viserys like makes his own decision. Yeah. I mean, of course, we know it's been influenced by multiple people, but I don't think even Otto knew like exactly that in this moment he was going to say Alicent. So I feel like this was the first time where we see Viserys like make his own decision, even though it's been manipulated. Like, it was still his decision to pick Allison, and I don't think it was told to him by Otto, which is why I think that Allison was surprised. Otto was pleasantly surprised, but I definitely think that it was like the first time we saw Viserys like, this is what I want to do. Like, I want to marry this girl, and she's the one I pick, you know? Even though we know it's been manipulated that way. But
yeah, it almost feels like his pot was kind of like at a slow boil, and then it just like finally started to boil over with all of this advice that he was getting that he didn't want to follow, and he doesn't know who he could trust. He doesn't know anything. So he's like, I'm going to just do my own thing. My daughter says, you got to do what you got to do. So I'm doing it. And obviously what he does does not make the people around him very happy, other than probably Otto. So looking forward to seeing how this ends up. This is a rough one. Poor Renira. I mean, she's really on her own here. She feels probably betrayed by her father. It seems like she feels betrayed by her best friend. It's just, she lost her mother. Her uncle is off in Dragonstone, kind of, you know, fighting against the king in a low key kind of way. So yeah, it's just not going great for her. She's going through it.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. So the next and the last scene we see is Corlys having a conversation with someone, explaining how he has built the strength of his own house from his own back. Everything he's ever needed in life, he has worked for, or everything he's ever had, he's worked for. He crawled basically and clawed his way to where he is today. And he says, I always thought that you and I were cut from the same cloth. And then we reveal that he's speaking to Daemon. And Daemon says to him, I wasn't aware you had a king for a brother. And he, you know, Corlys says that they've both been passed over too often. He explains to him what's going on with the stepstones, and he complains about Viserys and his inaction here. And Daemon says it was never my brother's strongest trait. And Corlys says what? And he says being king. So like Daemon knows he's weak. Everybody, I think everybody around him knows he's weak. Daemon's just not afraid to say it out loud. And then, this is interstitched with some more scenes and cuts of some crabs and the crab feeder, which like, I don't know what's going on with this guy, but he has like a weird mask thing on, and he just like looks a little crazy. Like his skin is all different colors, and he just like looks like I don't know. He just looks crazy. So I don't know if we know where this guy is like from or why he looks like this. But it seems like he's just kind of like pretty brutal in general. But we'll definitely see more of him next week. And Daemon, though, as Corlys is talking pretty negatively about him, says, I will speak of my brother as I wish. You will not. So there's still loyalty there for sure to the house and to his brother. So this is really interesting. And I don't know what you guys think about this or what Daemon's kind of end goal is here. But he obviously still cares about Viserys.
Yeah, no. He's basically like, I'm the only one who can talk shit about my brother. But yeah, I think there's a little bit, it's his brother. There's loyalty there. I feel like it's just like a lot of back and forth. Like as much as I fight with my brother, if someone talks crap about him, I will beat them up. Not physically, right. With my mouth, like my words. So yeah, like I feel like Targaryen bonds are really strong. And yeah, he didn't appreciate it, but he understands what he's saying.
Right.
I think he's bringing it to the right person, because I feel like Daemon is kind of on the outs, and this might prove as a way that he can come back in possibly by being this hero who just takes care of the stepstones, without hesitation.
Yep.
So yeah, it's great.
Yeah, no, I fully agree with Chanelle here in the sense that I think Daemon is looking at this as less as an opportunity to undermine his brother, more as an opportunity to like, okay, if I take out these crab people, the people are like my brother and whoever is in power is gonna like me. They're gonna give me more power. So I definitely think that in this instance, it's Daemon looking. I don't know if I would say looking out for his brother, but like he is looking out for himself, but in a way that he thinks might also help his brother. So he's trying to like kill two birds with one stone in a situation. Like, okay, let me make myself look more powerful, a better possible heir, whatever his end goal is, but also like maybe this can help my brother by like dealing with an issue he doesn't want to deal with.
Yeah, for sure. And Corlys even kind of says as much, right? He trying to use that as a bargaining chip with Daemon to just say, take the stepstone, and it'll show the realm your worth. Like you'll be strong. You'll be the strong one. And Daemon kind of just like turns around from the fire. He's like, this seems interesting. And that's kind of where we cut, is just like Daemon thinking on what Corlys is saying. But obviously we see in the preview for next week that all hell is breaking loose with these crab feeders. Or is there one crab feeder? Multiple? I don't really know. It seems like there's one guy that's ahead of it.
Yeah. With his little army. But yeah.
Yeah, it seems like we're going to see some bloodshed next week for sure. It seems like things are about to get intense, which is exciting. I mean, for an episode 3, I mean, we'll take it.
Up like that.
Yeah. So exciting
One other
stuff.
thing. Oh,
yeah,
sorry.
Please, no, continue.
The only other thing I wanted to highlight was I always write down like lines that I like, and Corlys had a great line where he said, "Our worth isn't given; it must be made." And he said that to Daemon, and I thought that was like a great line of like we need to take this for our own. Like if we want the power, it's up to us to like go for it, because we're not going to be given these opportunities. So I just thought that was a great line of like another great like line in throughout the episode to really show the acting chops. Like, like these people are actually acting. It's not just like a lot of times I feel like fantasy shows are treated as like, like they're not given the same respect as like these like dramas that are, So I thought that was a great line by Lord Corlys also.
Yeah, I loved this whole scene. I thought Corlys killed this scene, or the actor that plays Corlys. And I think Corlys is a really interesting character, because obviously he's not a villain, but he's stern in the way that he handles his business. And then we learn a little bit more about him here, about like where he came from, and he had to work for. Where Viserys, it's kind of the opposite. He was born into this royal family. his the king before him that he succeeded was a king for 60 years and was very successful and loved and everything. He picked up the realm in a great place. So he really didn't, he's kind of the opposite of Viserys in that way. So I think it's really, I like learning more about these characters. And I think it kind of goes back to what we were saying earlier, is just that because we're not focused on all these different houses and all these different people and these different threads of different stories, we can spend more time with the people that we're getting to know. So I kind of like that. So I think, everybody's very complicated and has their own motives. And it's interesting to kind of like peel back the layers a little bit on everybody. So shout out to Corlys. We'll see what happens with him. But so far I'm like, you're interesting. I don't love him. I don't hate him. But I'm just kind of like, I see where he's coming from. But yeah, I love that line too. Even just this whole conversation was great.
Yep, totally.
So heading into the next episode, is there anything you guys are looking forward to seeing? Obviously we have something going on with some fights breaking out with the crab feeders. It seems like Daemon probably does go and take Corlys' advice. Anything else that you guys are kind of like looking forward to seeing or hope that we see in the next episode?
Yeah, for me, bloodshed. I want to see some bloodshed. Yeah. I want to meet this crab eater person. I also want to see what happens with Renira and Allison. Like I want to see what the dynamic is like after all of that, so should be interesting.
Yeah, no, I agree. I want to see definitely some bloodshed. Like, I need a fight. I need something like a little bit faster, a little bit more energy than this episode. Which is funny. As we talked about it, I'm realizing I kind of like this episode more than I originally thought.
Gotcha.
We learned a lot about these characters, and now I'm sitting here thinking about like, oh, we added a new layer to this character, new layer to this character. So I'm interested to see where things continue to go. But I definitely need a bit more. Like, I need a head to come off. I need maybe some fire for the dragon, something like that.
More
and
fire.
I agree. Yes, fire. Please give me fire. But also, definitely interested to see the relationship, to see how Allison and Renira move forward, and kind of to see how Allison feels. Because, like I mentioned earlier, like I don't necessarily think, I feel like Allison's going to be in a very tricky situation. I can't wait to see how she handles it. And I think we're going to see like even more depth to Allison's character, because I don't know if necessarily she is okay with the decision that Viserys is making for her, even though she's probably going to go through it because of her father. But I can't wait to see like how she manages this like pretty difficult situation. I don't think she can say no. Like, she's going to have to go through with this. So it'll be very interesting to see how this goes down.
Yeah, I agree with both of you totally. And the other small thing that I'm not excited, it's weird to say that when I say what it is, but I'm interested to see what goes on with Viserys and his wounds. Like, something's got to give here. He's not healing. Things are seemingly getting worse. His finger seems a little janky. He's obviously had his hand in maggots today. Last week they were cauterizing him. It just doesn't seem like things are going great for him. So I'm interested to see if we'll touch on that and find out a little bit more about what's going on, and if his physical state starts to decline at all. Is that going to happen? Like, I'm just curious about like, where are we in the timeline next week? Are we a couple of months ahead, or are we a couple of days ahead? Like, I'm just curious to see kind of like how they piece all that stuff together. And shout out to Saltonius, who was in our Twitch chat, saying they're loving the character development of the series so far, and it's on par with season 1 of Game of Thrones. And I think we all agree. It feels like the writing is very neat and tidy here, and I think it really feels like we know George R.R. Martin is very heavily involved in this show, and I feel like we can feel that based on, I mean, of course the showrunners are different, but it does feel like these characters seem to be very true to all the things that we've heard about the Targaryens in the past and just their bloodline. So and plus the history that we're getting, I feel like we're getting a lot of that interesting stuff from the book that, I mean, obviously I haven't read it, but just knowing that it comes from the Maester's perspective and it is more history driven, I like that they're weaving that throughout with some of the tidbits about the dragons and Valyria. So I'm excited for more of that too, because it's interesting. It's interesting lore.
Agreed.
Cool. Any closing thoughts?
I'm excited.
Give me dragons.
Yeah. I'm excited. I'm loving the storytelling so far. I love Targaryens. I already showed you my chair. I'm ready to see more. So we'll see. I'm stoked. I'm happy of how the story is being told so far. So I'm hoping it doesn't let me down.
Agreed. I'm enjoying it, and I hope that it continues to go on an upward trajectory.
Yeah. Yeah, somebody who was not a fan of the Targaryens in the original series. I was definitely I was a Jon Snow fan. I'm loving everything that I'm seeing. So the Targaryens are winning me over. Plus their black and red aesthetic is very cool.
Yeah, it's very cool.
It's a vibe. So, cool. Well, if nothing else, Javier, we'll start closing up here. Where can the people find you? What are you up to on the internet these days?
So you can find me at _the_Starboy on my Twitter. That's where I tweet about pretty much every show that I watch. A lot of reality TV, a lot of Big Brother, and that's pretty much where you can see me to catch all my thoughts on all the different shows I watch, and here on Silent Podcast as well, podcasting about different shows.
Amazing. Thank you so much for joining us today. Anytime you want to come back, the door is open.
Appreciate
Chanelle,
it.
Where can the folks find you?
Yeah, so you can find me at Coder Girl Chan. I always say the 3 T's: TikTok, Twitter, Twitch. My Twitter is very random, but it's mostly about gaming and sometimes reality TV and coding. So you can catch me on Twitch, usually on like Monday, Thursday nights, and the weekend. So, but yeah, come check me out. Variety games, sometimes coding. But yeah.
Awesome. And you can give me a follow on Twitter if you would like to, at Real Slim Katie. It's just a hodgepodge mess of like, if you don't like Big Brother, mute the hashtag if you want to follow me. Otherwise, just wait until Big Brother season's over. But I'm tweeting about all kinds of stuff over there. You can also find me on Twitch at twitch.tv/RealSlimKatie with an underscore at the end, playing games a couple of days a week and just chatting about TV and life and all types of other things in the chat over there. And you can find me all over the place on Silent Podcasts these days. I am podcasting about Big Brother on the Bounce Checks podcast, which comes out weekly with Isaiah, Josiane, and Lance when he's able to join us. We're rounding out the season pretty quickly here. We're getting close to the end, and there's just it's a mess. So come join us, and we'll share our unfiltered opinions with you every week if you would like to join us there. You can also find me talking all things Challenge USA on TJH Quitters with Carrie. And also with Carrie, you can find me talking about all things Real Housewives related. We just got a trailer of Real Housewives of Salt Lake City today, which was
so good.
Unhinged and so good. I cannot wait. So check us out there at the Cool Water Show, also on Silent Podcasts. And you can find Silent Podcasts anywhere that you listen to your podcasts. If you listen on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, a bunch of other apps, we published all of those, so check us out there. Also, feel free to leave us a rating if you liked what you hear. It helps us get discovered and helps us in the search algorithm. So that's much appreciated if you would like to do that. You can also follow us or watch us live on Twitch. You can search Silent Podcast there. We are Silent Podcasts, no spaces on Twitch. You can find us on Twitter at silent_podcast if you'd like to keep up with what we're doing these days. And you can find us on YouTube by searching Silent Podcasts. So feel free to drop us a subscription there. We stream a decent amount of our content live. Not everything is on YouTube, but a lot of it is. So feel free, if you prefer a visual medium, you can just look at our beautiful faces while we talk to you about Game of Thrones and all types of other things. So thank you, everybody. Until next week, we will be back, and have a great night, day, afternoon, morning, evening, whatever time you're listening to us. Bye.
Bye, everyone.
See ya.